Now let's talk about how to glaze your Raku project. Follow me over to the cabinet. Alright, what we're looking at is the glaze cabinet. So we've got some miscellaneous supplies on the bottom two shelves, and then the next one up you can see is labeled Raku. That's where you can get specific Raku glazes. You can see how metallic they are. That's one of the great qualities of a Raku glaze. Also notice that wherever the clay was not glazed, the clay turns black. And that's because of all the smoke and carbon that is deposited in the clay body. One shelf up you can see cone 05 and 06 glazes. You can use these for Raku as well because these glazes melt in the same temperature range as these Raku glazes right here, which is 05 and 06. So we go to approximately 1900 degrees in the kiln. So these will work just fine. And you can see a sample test tile right here of glazes that were used from this shelf in the cabinet. One thing you need to pay attention to though, because we got these types of glazes right here, which you can see are cone 5 and 6. This is a very different melting point than 05 and 06. So if you're ever wondering if somebody put this on the right shelf, you need to read the label. And I know how much you all love to read the label, but it's really important. So there's a lot of information here. You can see that it reminds you to shake it, stir it well, because as you know, this is crushed rock in here, and crushed rock just sinks to the bottom. It also says to apply 3 brush coats. And it also says fire to witness cone 05. Before you start glazing and you've chosen your glazes, make sure that you shake it up. As I've said before, glaze is made of crushed up rock and it tends to sink to the bottom, and if you don't have all of the rock particles mixed up, they may not melt correctly, or you might not get the right color. Before you shake a container of glaze, make sure that the cap is screwed tightly on. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess on your hands. Alright, so what I'm going to show you right now is just a couple ways to glaze for your Raku firing. Wherever the clay is not glazed, it's going to turn black. You can use this to your advantage in considering it as a decoration element. Alright, in terms of controlling where the black is, there's a couple ways you can do that. So I've got some Raku glaze right here. This is called Kansas City Lights. It's an awesome glaze. It is very similar to what's on this piece right here. So you can simply brush, very controlled, on your piece of pottery. And where's the black going to show up? On the glaze? Nope. It's going to show up right here in these areas in between. So you can actually use the smoke to create a pattern. And then this one, this big floppy one here, I'm just going to kind of just use it spontaneously on the piece and let it contribute its own quality to it, which is really nice. That splash technique is going to look fantastic in the firing. The other thing that you can do is you can pour glaze on your piece. So this is kind of a scrap piece of pottery that I've used for other demos. I'm actually going to pour the Kansas City Lights on it. It's kind of a chunky glaze, and you can see those wonderful drip marks on that side and this side. And I think that's all I'm going to do with the Kansas City Lights for that one. And now I'm going to take some white. This is actually white Raku glaze, cone 0506. I have a new bowl because I don't want to mix up this glaze with the Kansas City Lights. And I'm just going to drip this on. I think I'm going to drip it on a little bit this way. Shake it so it runs. Nice, I like those drips a lot. And I'm just gonna hold this pot horizontally until this glaze dries and stiffens up a little bit. Because if I turn it right side up too soon, my drips will go down toward the foot of the pot, and I don't want that. I want the drips to be going across. All right, one more way that I'm gonna go over with you in terms of putting glaze on your piece and something other than brushing it on is to use a sponge. Some sponges have texture. In fact, there's a form of pottery called spongeware that puts the glaze on just like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to get these in the kiln and fire them up and see what kind of results we get. If you make a mistake with your glaze, I personally suggest that if something happens that you don't like, that you consider it that the process is contributing to your piece, and to try to be okay with that, because a lot of happy accidents can happen. However, if you just really hate what happened, you can wash this piece off at the sink. You can take a scrubber or a sponge and just really wash this glaze off really well, but you're going to have to let it get dry before you apply glaze to it again, which means you're going to have to wait until the next class period. I want to talk to you a moment about glaze contamination. It's really important to keep these colors pure. Otherwise, you're not going to get the melt and the color that you expect. Two main ways for a glaze can get contaminated is to stick a dirty brush. This brush has smoky blue on it. If I go into the white, I'm going to contaminate the white. Another way to contaminate glazes is if I'm using several colors and I'm pouring them over a piece, is that they get contaminated in the bottom of the bowl here. And the only place for this to go is down the drain, which is a waste of glaze. So if you're using two separate colors, use two separate bowls. That way you can pour the glaze back into the correct container. When you're done with your brushes, after you're done glazing, wash them out really well. The best way to wash out a brush is to have some water running into the palm of your hand. Kind of rotate the brush in your palm. It's really good for getting out paint or glaze. Shake out the brush. Put it in this container, bristles up. Just like that.